A bizarre and treacherous landscape where people settled despite the untold risks.
These colours are psychedelic. These are danger signs. These are warning signs. It feels unnatural.
An idyllic tropical island that felt the full force of nature.
On the radio, they announced what was happening, and people couldn't quite believe it. This hadn't happened in nearly 300 years. No one was really taking it seriously. It took the whole island by surprise.
A ghost fleet laying stranded in the desert sands.
It's a very odd thing, seeing a boat in the desert. A boat is an indicative sign of water, but then you look around and there's none available.
And a collection of battered structures which are revealing Mother Nature's secrets.
An entrance gate collapsed, a running track twisted and cracked. And then it starts to dawn on you, this place was a school.
Crumbling remains and ruins of lost worlds. They were shaped by extraordinary events and are now haunted by the past. Their secrets waiting to be revealed. In Ethiopia's northern Afar region, a supernatural landscape is fraught with dangers.
This is one of the most otherworldly places on planet Earth. This strange landscape, completely devoid of any sign of plant or animal life, strange colors, pools of iridescent water, fumaroles, hot springs. There's really nothing else quite like it.
It's an alien landscape where yellow, green, and red color these mystical geological formations.
This place is really a furnace. There's no shade to be found for miles. There's no vegetation. And you've got the sun beating down on you. It really is a hotbed.
You would never imagine finding people here, yet there are signs of life.
Rising up out of this strange, blasted landscape, you see the ruins of some kind of community. You see some houses, broken down trucks, some pipes, bits of infrastructure, but everything kind of encrusted and growing right out of the material that makes up the ground itself.
Today, the village looks desolate and abandoned, but at one particular time, there was a group of people determined enough to make this their home.
It's nicknamed the Land of the Dead. Life can barely survive here, so why on earth would anyone build a village here?
Worku Kobede is a local guide who is an expert on this dangerous place.
So this is Afar. We have a really brutal geology here, so we come across a lot of skeletons. It's one of the lowest and hottest places in the world. It's around 400 feet below sea level.
The mercury here can skyrocket to almost 50 degrees Celsius. But it isn't just the temperatures that make this location so hostile.
You walk around this area, you can hear the sort of salty crust crumble under your feet. In fact, it's quite dangerous as you get close to some of these stagnant pools. They can be a pH of 1 or less. They can be just like sulfuric acid. And so there is a danger that if your foot falls through the crust, you can actually burn your skin. So it's quite a stark environment.
It's part of a rift valley system where two tectonic plates are essentially pulling apart, and the Earth is literally getting ripped open.
Yet, flanked by steaming fissures, lie the shattered remains of a settlement. This is the town of Dalal.
So there's not much to see here, but there are clues as to what happened in the past.
There's buildings, there's bits of machinery, there's bits of material on the ground that was evidence that people were living here. What a place to live.
The answer lies beneath your feet.
This crazy landscape where biology tips into chemistry is clearly why man came here.
This is the location where you have a volcano that's actually erupting through all of these salty layers. It interacts with that bedrock and it starts to dissolve the salts, and you get really remarkable acidic hydrothermal fluids.
It's laden with all kinds of chemicals and salts, and that's what causes all the strange colors and pools and geysers and fumaroles that you see. It's a chemical wonderland.
And there was one element in Dalal's chemical cauldron that was in demand around the whole world.
There's one particular mineral deposit known as potash, which is a mishmash of various chemicals, but it has a lot of potassium in it.
It's almost unique to have such concentrations of potash actually at the Earth's surface. And without much processing, you can literally scrape the potash off the Earth's surface.
Potash, this amazing thing that we use in fertilizers and other chemical reactions. And here it is on the surface of the Earth.
In 1912, 2 Italian adventurers obtained the first potash mining concession, and the industrial excavation of this precious resource soon began.
There was a big demand for the potash. Agriculture was increasing around the world. There was a big demand for fertilizer. So more workers began to flood into this community to be part of this operation.
Once here, they built houses however they could.
The people who came here to dig the mines lived in houses like this, which they built from local salt rock.
In such a harsh and remote location, everything, including drinking water, had to be brought across the parched land. But the mining community in Dalal prospered.
Here you can see a generator that was used for water and the wires they used for electricity.
The blistering heat and unstable earth below didn't deter those seeking their fortunes. Soon, larger companies followed, and in 1945, a 45-mile-long railway line was built to transport the precious potash to the port of Mersa Fatma in modern-day Eritrea.
The railway really opened up production, and it also opened up the town to other people. At its peak, 50,000 tons were being mined. This was a place of opportunity, a place where fortunes could be made.
Potash flowed out of Dalal, but the working conditions were punishing.
There's acidic waters floating around. You've got sort of noxious fumes and salty fluids getting into your hands.
The miners were working in the hottest place on Earth. This had to have been a perilous environment at best. Still, the potential of what could be found here, what could be extracted, outweighed the risks.
They developed a thriving little operation, but it wasn't going to last.
The unrelenting heat and the risk of volcanic disaster threatened to shatter Dalal. But in the end, its decline was driven by changing economics following the First World War.
It became easier to get potash from different sources in Germany and the USA.
The minute the global market for potash changes slightly, all of a sudden you're tipped from profit to non-profit. And when there's no profit, people leave very, very quickly.
Since then, various international operators have tried to exploit the rich resources that lie under the baking Ethiopian sun. But Mother Nature was always against them. It is no surprise that the word Dalal itself means disintegration.
Anything that's metal is rusting. You've only got to go and see what's happened to a Land Rover or another truck that's only been there for a few tens of years, and it is literally in pieces. The place is a horrible place to live.
Mother Nature didn't set up this environment to be friendly to humans, and I think it took a few decades, but humans eventually got the hint.
Though the village lies desolate and abandoned now, not all the mining in the area has stopped.
There's no longer any industrial mining of these resources, but people from the local Afar tribe will often come in, often at night, with camel caravans and carve out large slabs of salt, load them on their camels, and take them out to market.
When you look at ruins like this village, it really does bring home how determined humans are to exploit the environment, how determined we are to make money, to create wealth, wherever that should be.
And visiting Dalal is still fraught with dangers, old and new. Just 60 miles from Venice, in the mountains of northern Italy, is a mystifying sight. Looming above the town of Longarone, one of the world's tallest dams appears to be holding back nothing but empty space. In the aftermath of World War II, Italy turned to hydroelectricity to power its shattered industries.
Hydroelectric power is incredibly attractive in a mountainous region because if you can have a tight valley and you can trap water high up, you've suddenly got the ability for that water to move downhill very quickly and generate free electricity.
Engineers constructed the Vajont Dam. It was the centerpiece of an ambitious hydroelectric network that would bring energy to the cities of northern Italy. And in 1960, the 3-mile-long reservoir behind it was filled with water.
Throughout the construction of the Vajont Dam, there were repeated warnings, both from locals and expert geologists, that the mountain behind the dam was extremely unstable.
When you're filling the dam up with water, there's a lot of weight, a lot of pressure that's being exerted on the sides of the valley.
On the 9th of October 1963, they were proved right. Over 9 billion cubic feet of rock broke away from the mountainside and hurtled into the reservoir below.
It wasn't just the mass of earth that slid away into the reservoir. It was the ferocious speed at which it came. 45 seconds for effectively half of the mountainside to drop into the water.
The landslide pushed a tsunami of water over the dam and down the gorge towards Longarone.
Forced down such a tight gorge, it displaced all of that air, and it was almost like a shock wave of air. Hit the village directly before the water did and started destroying some of the buildings. Next minute, a wall of water hits you. It's got rocks in it, it's got trees in it. It is like liquid sandpaper, and it just wipes the village clean.
The town was obliterated, and nearly 2,000 people were killed.
The tragic irony of this story is that whilst the villages below the dam were completely destroyed by the onrush of water, the dam itself remained completely intact.
However, with the reservoir packed full of debris, this mighty construction was abandoned. Today, the Vajont Dam remains a testament to the dangers of underestimating the forces of nature.
From an engineering perspective, the Vajont Dam should have become one of the most impressive dams in history. Instead, it's become one of the most infamous.
On the lush Caribbean island of Montserrat, a once idyllic retreat was built right in the firing line.
The hills level out into coves, and the beaches give way to forests. There's a quiet, rugged beauty to this place.
Large houses nestle in the hillside, and the views must be amazing for the people who live there. It feels like an exclusive private island resort.
This island is so lush and green. You can see thick forest and mountain ranges reaching right up to the clouds. You can clearly see why it's been called the Emerald Isle.
The devastation wrought on this site was not confined to a single area, but a vast tract of the island.
There's a variety of different types of buildings, and in them you can see things like government documents are lying around.
One is round with many rooms and beds inside. Another is full of office equipment. Another, you realise, is part of a shopping centre.
There's bits of infrastructure lying absolutely everywhere.
Amongst all the decay, you can see these buildings once had opulence. Whoever lived here used to live the high life.
It feels as though everyone left in a rush. There's crockery on the tables, videotapes were left on the floor, important documents are left on desks. What caused everyone to leave in such an incredible hurry?
More and more buildings reveal themselves, all equally annihilated. This isn't just a few houses on a hillside that have been destroyed. This is a whole town.
Taking a closer look reveals a clue as to what happened here.
When you look all around, there's a grey material on the ground. It seems to have silted up all of the buildings and covered the whole area in a grey, sandy material.
Just 10 miles long and less than 7 miles wide, this is the tiny island of Montserrat. Local guide Norman Castle is one of the few remaining residents. He remembers the island's capital, Plymouth, before disaster struck.
Plymouth was really a special place. It could have been a hustling and bustling town, but it was always still a bit of a relaxed atmosphere here.
Plymouth now lies within a perilous exclusion zone.
Getting into this area is not easy and gives you some sense of just how serious this disaster was and how it hasn't ended. It's still ongoing.
But this was a main road leading right into the center of Plymouth.
The capital's wrecked infrastructure serves as an eerie reminder of its lively past.
A lot of the business people stayed at the Flora Fountain Hotel because of its location in Plymouth. And so it was very popular with the business folk.
25% of this small nation's economy came from tourism.
This was just a wonderful place. The rich and famous gathered here, people from different parts of the world, for conferences, parties, weddings. And now, they're all gone.
The grey ash that coats Plymouth provides the answer to what happened here. This is the Soufriere volcano. It looms over the former capital and the whole of southern Montserrat. It has been dormant for more than 300 years.
The islanders had almost forgotten about it. It had never occurred to them that it would stir at all, let alone emit steam and ash.
On the radio, they announced what was happening, and people couldn't quite believe it. This hadn't happened in nearly 300 years. No one was really taking it seriously. It took the whole island by surprise.
Well, it started out with us hearing this sound like jet engines. People, for me, I was wondering if, was there something going on with the US government? Because there were times when we would see low-flying fighter jets, F-18s, F-16s, skirting around these areas. And we were saying, well, it must be those Navy or Air Force planes that are flying low. But then it was so constant. So people were saying, I wonder what's happening, and then it sounded as if it was coming from the hills.
In June 1995, the Soufriere Hills volcano burst into life.
But we never knew that it was the initial cracking of the rocks and the steam venting which created that sound, until there were a few bits of black ash dusting areas. And it is after that that it was found out that it was actually the start of volcanic activity.
Compared to other volcanic events, the 95 eruption was relatively tame. The Earth's fiery magma had not yet reached the surface.
These are eruptions which occur when magma meets groundwater and flashes that to steam, and it can break open the rocks and make sort of big thunderclap noises.
It also spewed out so much ash that Plymouth was plunged into darkness.
My goodness, at times it was like turning day into night. You can put your hand in front of your face and you couldn't see your hand. It was that dark.
As the first layer of ash coated everything in its path, scientists flew in from all over the world to figure out what the volcano would do next. Seismologist Roderick Stewart was one of them.
When I first came here, I was basically full of questions, trying to find out what was going on and things. And this is a type of volcano that can change very quickly from looking very calm to being very dangerous.
A month after that first eruption, the activity increased, and scientists felt that they could no longer guarantee the safety of the people in that part of the island.
Plymouth lay in direct line of fire, so residents were evacuated to the north of Montserrat, out of the volcano's deadly range. Many of these structures are the remnants of their abandoned homes.
Your home was your pride and joy in Montserrat. You can see all these buildings on the slopes, all beyond. All these are abandoned buildings. Billions of dollars of people's sweat and tears.
But many could not be persuaded to leave their homes behind.
Every day, the residents had to make a difficult decision. Stay and watch your business collapse, or leave and save your life.
The islanders managed to live with the volcano, and despite the exclusion zone, returned to as much of a normal life as possible. Everyone understood the risks and chose to live with them.
While Plymouth had been covered in a layer of ash, the volcano hadn't yet released any lava. But the scientists feared the worst was yet to come.
The lava that comes out of this volcano is so viscous that it cannot form a lava flow. So it just comes out and it stays at the top of the volcano, and it builds what we call a lava dome.
The lava dome blocked the mouth of the volcano, effectively a plug sitting on top of an unstoppable force. The question was, how long would it stay in place? Many residents had already been evacuated, but some chose to play a deadly game of chance.
Some people started to defy orders and go back to the strict exclusion zone.
With the volcano's cone blocked by solidified lava, pressurized magma had been building up deep within its core. June 1997, the volcano finally unleashed its full fury.
It got to a point where it couldn't sustain itself. It collapsed with a major eruption.
June 25th, 1997, when folks lost their lives, those were some of the longest days of my life.
As acting airport manager, Norman Castle witnessed the terrible events unfolding.
It was almost like a continuous set of pyroclastic flows, pulse after pulse. And then there were some larger and larger ones. And the scientists sounded the siren for evacuating the airport.
You've got an avalanche of pulverized lava and ash and gas. They travel very, very fast, and they basically just smash everything in their way. So they are very, very dangerous.
You saw the clear line of demarcation where that pyroclastic flow came down and struck these buildings. But then the hospital and those other buildings high up on the slope were untouched. So it's just amazing how different parts of Plymouth was just devastated in a way, and then others were just left standing.
Millions of tons of ash were deposited across a vast area, filling all the valleys and riverbeds. For the residents who had returned to their homes, the results were deadly.
As it got later towards evening, an elderly lady, she walked all through those hills and came, and she met us down below here, and she said, you know, I'm the only one who made it. There were some of the staff who had gone over there and never saw them again. Sorry.
Over the next 4 months, the volcano exploded 75 times, burying Plymouth in layer upon layer of superheated ash.
At one point, there was a pyroclastic flow which came and hit the Parliament building at the back and started a fire which lit most of these buildings. If you look below here, you can see some of the charred remains. At that stage, when they saw Plymouth burning, that was when folks knew. That is it. We are not going back to the Plymouth that we knew.
The pyroclastic flows finally stopped, but that wasn't the end of the tragedy. Montserrat's wet tropical climate would soon deliver another blow. Many of the structures aren't buried in lava rock or ash, but mud, set hard as concrete. So what happened?
When it rains, it forms mud flows, which pick up all this material, and they've got immense power, and they can bring boulders down, they can bring trees down. So Plymouth now is almost totally buried.
Over the years, the low sections were filled, and then it goes higher and higher, and eventually it covers completely some of these buildings.
The city was now permanently evacuated and left as a ghost town.
The Soufriere Hills volcano slumbers, for now. But its effects are still being felt to this day.
So where you had, within Plymouth and its environs, thousands of households having to leave this area and migrate, that's what really broke the camel's back. Because people decided at that stage they had to migrate overseas. And so the population went from over 10,000 at one point down to 2,500. And now it's about 4,900 plus.
Away from the destruction in the south, the north of Montserrat is beginning to show signs of recovery, beyond the volcano's deadly reach.
The population is growing. It's about 5,000 now. Tourism has picked up. These are tough folks, and they're determined to survive and thrive, even if they have to have a monster for a neighbor.
In Uzbekistan, a barren desert landscape is not quite what it seems. Over 40 miles from the nearest shoreline, this stranded ghost fleet feels a long way from home.
It's a very odd thing, seeing a boat in the desert. A boat is an indicative sign of water, but then you look around and there's none available.
But a clue on the town's sign suggests those vessels do in fact belong here. So, What extraordinary event created this bizarre scene? In the 1960s, the town of Moynok sat on the edge of the Aral Sea, the world's fourth largest body of inland water. Almas Tovashiv was one of the many employed in the booming local fishing industry.
More than 200 vessels were engaged in the fishing industry, and over 100 vessels were transporting fish to the fish canning factory, where 1,200 people worked and annually produced up to 12 million cans of fish.
But by 1990, all the fishing here had stopped. Somehow the sea had become a desert.
People understood that there was less water. There was not even water for watering the gardens or for use on the farms.
Incredibly, the cause of this disaster was man-made. The Aral Sea was fed by two rivers. But when Uzbekistan's Soviet rulers decided to prioritize cotton production, they diverted that water away from here. It had devastating consequences.
It was ecological suicide, because once they took all the water out of those rivers, there wasn't enough water to feed the Aral Sea. In this hot environment, it's sunny most of the time, there's a lot of evaporation. Without water continuing to flow into it, the Aral Sea began to evaporate.
In just 30 years, the sea level dropped by nearly 17 meters, and in places, the shoreline receded by almost 100 miles. Today, a third of the seabed is exposed, uncovering a layer of dust, salt, and the toxic residues of pesticides. This poisonous mixture is just waiting to be swept up by the next strong breeze. Off the coast of mainland China, in central Taiwan, an empty structure sits covered with intricate sculptures.
You come across these highly decorative doors, these ornate statues, and these dragons.
Looking over to this temple, this wonderful holy building, it looks incredible, doesn't it? But as you look further down, you realize it's collapsed. It's all over the place.
It's been completely destroyed. There's rubble strewn everywhere.
This is Wuchang Temple in the town of Jiji. Its almost intact roof draped over the rubble below.
And when you look inside, you see smashed concrete and leaning pillars, almost like it's been pulverized from the inside.
Yet for some reason, this ruin has been preserved.
It has become a memorial. Pilgrims visit and legends swirl around the temple.
What forces were at play here? Were they purely natural, or did something more sinister take its toll? Wuchang Temple is not as ancient as it appears. Built in 1923, this isn't the only structure on the island that displays terrible damage. 15 miles away in Taichung City, an even younger building lies in ruins.
You see a 3-story building with floors collapsed in on what look like rooms of varying sizes. It actually looks like quite a functional building, but as you really peer into it, you begin to see what look like chairs and even blackboards.
An entrance gate collapsed, a running track twisted and cracked, and then it starts to dawn on you, this place was a school. You only hope the children weren't inside when this destruction took place.
This is Guangfu Junior High School. Many in Taiwan remember the day that brought devastation to the school and temple. For Law Wei Jun, September the 21st, 1999 was a day that changed his life forever.
I got back home around 11. I went for a shower and prepared to go to sleep. Around 1 a.m., I suddenly felt a severe headache. Then I felt like I was eating rocks. I was buried alive. I thought, was this the communists?
Historically, Taiwan has had a complex and tense relationship with mainland China. So at first, many people thought that China's Communist Party had launched a military strike against the island.
What force decimated these buildings? Were the communists of mainland China really to blame? As Luo Wei-jun clawed his way out of the rubble, a different picture began to emerge.
I climbed out of the ruins and saw everyone was crying. Then, because there were aftershocks, all of the houses kept shaking.
Taiwan had not been hit by a communist military strike, but a major earthquake.
Roads buckled, bridges collapsed, and landslides diverted rivers, causing the formation of completely new lakes.
The earthquake triggered a process known as liquefaction. Soil became almost fluid, leading to mud flows, landslides, and avalanches.
In and amongst these rolling hills that almost look like they've been crumpled up like a carpet, you can see these buildings that seem like they've been sucked down into the earth.
As many as 2,500 people were killed, and 300,000 people were made homeless. In Taiwan, this was the second deadliest earthquake in recorded history. It exposed nationwide shortcomings in the building and construction industry.
Taiwan's construction industry really took off in the 1990s. There was a massive boom in building. And what we're looking at here is what happens when design codes and factors of safety, they're pared down to the minimum.
Lessons had to be learned.
Actually, the 921 earthquake is a collective pain shared in Taiwan. Even if we try to forget it, it's a lesson in history. We hope our government will enforce education and raise awareness about natural disasters, how to take preventative measures and adapt.
Incredibly, Taiwan has between 20 and 30,000 earthquakes annually. Only 20 to 30 of these are strong enough for people to actually feel, but it really highlights the need to prepare for future generations so that they don't suffer in these events.
And the 921 earthquake, as it became known, offered a great opportunity to do exactly that. In 1996, a vast network of detectors had been installed across the country. They collected huge amounts of data.
It was the first earthquake in history to be recorded in such precise detail. Therefore, the earthquake was crucial in informing the country about earthquakes and preventative measures. It brought about huge change.
Chloe Huang works as a guide at this school, now preserved as a memorial.
The classroom was built right on the fault line, and this road was built along the fault line. As you can see, the impact these buildings suffered was absolutely huge.
But the school offers something else, something totally unique.
This is one of the fault lines in Keelung. It strikes past the playground of the school. You can see here, it used to be a running track, but the track here has been lifted up.
As the two plates along this boundary pulled apart and lifted up, the school was torn in half. This was the first time an earthquake fault line could be seen and analysed in such detail. The running track also protects the exposed fault line from further erosion.
This was a huge moment in the research of seismology and the development of earthquake-proof engineering and construction.
So out of this massive disaster came a great civil engineering challenge. How do we keep people safe in the future?
It was the dawn of a new era. Although the unstoppable forces of nature had taken a devastating toll, Taiwan would choose to tackle them head-on. The wreckage and destruction sparked a new era in research and civil engineering. The piece de resistance was this.
Taipei 101 opened in 2004, and it was a real statement to the world. But to an extent, it was also thumbing its nose at Mother Nature, saying, we can take whatever you got to throw at us. And they even built some of the stories in the pagoda style. We're talking about what was the highest skyscraper in the world at the time. It still represents a marvel of cutting-edge design. It has isolators, dampers, and a shock absorber that sits between the 88th and 92nd floor.
So when the building sways, these dampers absorb all of that earthquake energy and reduce vibration.
In Jiji, the Wuchang Temple sits frozen in its destruction. Like Taipei 101, its design was inspired by the ancient wooden pagodas found across this region. As with many of Taiwan's buildings, its designers hadn't accounted for the full potential of Earth's tectonic forces. When the 9/21 earthquake struck, it collapsed into the dust. Today, many still bear the scars of that infamous day.
I haven't slept well for 20 years. The aftershocks remain. They remain in our hearts.
And like all Taiwanese people, he's ready for the next warning.
When the government sensors pick up an earthquake, a message is instantly sent to everyone's phone in the system. It tells them where the epicenter is, and it tells them the magnitude of the quake, so they've got time to prepare. So it's a very sophisticated government warning system, and it's a culture that is preparing itself for the worst.
Now they are abandoned, crumbling ruins. Many remind us of dark times, but some were once beacons of hope and progress, lasting testimonies to human imagination, enterprise, and spirit.